Alright, so a Tiny Tina's Wonderlands finna drop really soon. I want to go ahead and make like a big guide to give y'all like some information, just stuff to know and everything going into the game. Now I just want to say I'm not going to be talking too much about the characters themselves. I made a whole video breaking down all of their skill trees, so if you want to see that, I'll leave a link to it at the top of the description. I will do a brief debriefing on all of them though, just real quick. So obviously you have the Berserker, the Clawbringer, the Graveborn, the Spellshot, the Spore Warden, and the Stabbomancer, and we'll be getting another class later on in the future. The Berserker is a giant frost wielding titan that does quite the amount of frost damage with some good cryo efficiency as well. You have things like the Stabbomancer, who's specially designed and critical hits, doing stuff from the shadows and invisibility. Also, Stabbomancer has amazing synergy with just about every class in the game, it feels like. Then you have things like the Spell Shot, which is, I mean, self-explanatory. It's a spell shot. It's really good for anything that involves, you know, spells, a mage style build, anything like that. And then you have the Graveborn, which is basically a vampire style build where it specializes in dark magic damage, dark magic efficiency, and draining its own HP while doing a massive amount of AoE damage. Really specializes in spell damage as well. You also have things like the Spore Warden, the Clawbringer, the Graveborn, the Spore Warden all have their own companion, which is very good. When you multi-class into both of them, you can have up to 2 companions just rolling around chilling with you, which is very nice. Spore Warden focuses on gun damage and ricochets, which is very solid. And then the Clawbringer focuses, I mean, it's like a Thor with some massive lightning and firing damage that can tear up some enemies. I have a whole other video actually going in depth with the skill trees, but I want to actually get into some useful information. Alright, so starting off with some basic stuff. Obviously, the initial level cap when the game starts is going to be level 40. You're going to be able to multi-class after you beat the main story. The main story, you have a few different modifiers. You have, you know, normal mode, harder difficulty mode, and I think there's like the third is the max difficulty mode. Now, with this still being like a Borderlands style game, we are going to have, you know, a new style of element being introduced. Last time we had things like radiation introduced in BL3. We obviously have kinetic damage, fire damage, poison damage, lightning, frost, and the new one being dark magic. I'm going to put a chart up on the screen courtesy of the homie Lazy Data. Obviously we have, you know, just useful information here on how all the elements work across all the different types of enemies. Obviously you have your basic stuff, how fire is still effective against flesh, poison on armor, shock or lightning on shields, and then, you know, frost for bones. Dark magic is not effective against no type of enemies, but it always will always be 90% across the board, and it will always, it's a lifesteal. So the percentage the damage that you do, you get dealt back as HP when using dark magic, which is what the Graveborn specializes in. Don't want to spend too much talking on this, but if you want to pause and just like look at this for a little bit, there you go. Now the big one that a lot of people are excited for are things like spells introducing in Wonderlands. These are going to be basically replacing grenades, and they have quite the amount of new stuff. So like weapons, they do have manufacturers. You have things like Conjura, which are fire and forget spells. You literally just use them and go about your business. Arcane are basically spells that you have to hold to cast, kind of like a fusion rifle. They spew out some magic once you've hold it down all the way. Word Weaver, basically they create spells that are repeat cast, which is very nice. They just repeatedly cast after, you know, multiple times, kind of in a loop. And then you have Miraculum, or Miraculum, my bad, are self-casting spells. So they are on their own cooldown and they just cast by themselves, which is very good. Also similar to like weapons and shields, spells are going to have like their own mods. So basically, these mods can grant extra damage, cooldown rate, higher status chance, higher status damage, extra crit damage, a higher crit chance, a higher splash radius, another projectile in the spell, or maybe just an additional spell charge, which is very nice. As we know, spells do not have any sort of mana system. They're on their own separate cooldown. Keep in mind though, not all spells are created equal, and there are different types of spells. We have things like fireball spells, tornadoes, hawk spells, yes, which is hawk spells, ice spikes, hydra spells, which is very interesting, meteors. And then we have a protective bubble, kind of like a word of dawn. And then we also have earthquake fissures and thunderbolt spells. So yeah, that's quite the amount of different types of spells, different manufacturers, and they have quite the amount of different mods that you can roll on them. Also, something I want to mention is that the spell shot is able to roll 2 spells at once if they want to, and they have access to the polymorph spell, which just changes an enemy into a skip. Doesn't do anything. It's just a goofy little spell that changes an enemy into a non-threatening little sheep. Let's talk gun manufacturers. They're very similar to previously. Their names are just a little bit changed. Furior is Tedior. When you reload them, it's going to do some sort of goofy animation. Maybe it's going to summon a companion. Maybe it's going to turn into a bolt of lightning. It just does some sort of unique function whenever you reload it. That is Furior, kind of similar to Tedior. I'm looking at that for companion builds, though. We have Hyperius, which is our Hyperion. They have their own weapon shield, and the longer you hold on the trigger, the accuracy, very similar. Stoker, high fire rate, that's Vladov. Skullduggery, that's COV. Hold the trigger till it heats up. We have Torg. Do I really need to say what Torg specializes in? Then we have Black Powder, which is basically Jacobs. As you can see here, there's no Maliwan. Interesting. So along with your traditional inventory that you've seen in past Borderlands games, we've also had some new stuff coming added into Wonderlands. Things like rings, amulets, and armor. So basically, what rings are pieces of that you basically ways to buff your character. You can hold up to 2 rings. The rarities goes as follow, right? You have your whites, your greens, your blues, and your purples. Each ring is able to roll with a primary or secondary bonus depending on the rarity. For instance, white rarity rings can drop with 0 primary passives, but they drop with a secondary passive. Uncommons are able to roll with 1 primary, 1 secondary. Blue quality rings are able to roll with 1 primary and 2 secondaries. And then purple rarity rings are able to roll with 2 primary and 2 secondary bonuses. Primary bonuses go as follow. There's only 4 of them. You have extra spell damage, extra ability damage, extra melee damage, and extra gun damage. Keep in mind, as the higher the rarity, the higher the percentage of the bonuses. Secondary bonuses, there's a little bit more, and they go as follow. You have ability crit damage, companion crit damage, and companion chance, or companion crit chances along with companion crit damage. You have companion health. You have extra melee crit chance. You have increased dark magic efficiency. That's very useful. You have spell crit damage. You have spell radius. You also have pistol mag size. And then some special quest items yield like special bonuses. For instance, I think there's one that gives you 25% damage while you're in a special location. But yeah, rings basically are ways to get more and more passive buffs to your character. You can hold up to 2 of them. Also, total side note, while you are in the world going about your business, if you find these lucky dice on the field, pick them up. They will give you a piece of loot, and they give you a permanent luck buff. Basically, it's going to give you an increased percentage to your luck permanently. So if you find those, open those up to slowly increase your luck over time. Back to the armor and the new stuff, right? So we just went over the rings. Now we got some amulets. Amulets are similar, however, they have a little bit stronger abilities. So amulets, you can only hold up to 1. They have the same style of rarity, you know, white, greens, blues, purples. And then I think there's legendaries. I'm not too certain yet. I'm not confirming or denying if there's legendary amulets in the game. Okay, so white rarity amulets are able to roll with just 1 secondary passive. Uncommons are able to roll with a secondary and a primary. Blues are able to roll with 2 secondaries and I want to say 2 primaries. Purples are able to roll also with 2 secondaries, 2 primaries. Primary bonuses for amulets are a little bit different than rings. There's only 2 of them. They go as follow. You're able to roll with any like type of element damage. Maybe it's like dark magic damage, extra fire damage, poison damage, or you get a class power, which is literally just a percentage bonus to a class of whatever you're on. For instance, higher Graveborn damage, increased spell shot damage, just simple stuff like that. Then the secondary bonuses for amulets are things like action skill cooldown rate, reload speed, magazine size, status effect chance or status effect damage, dark magic efficiency, luck percentage, and then a random unique bonus you can get is like slam launches homing fireballs. You actually can get quite a bit of unique bonuses, but that's just one to mention. So that's amulets and rings, basically just stronger ways to get additional passive buffs on your character. Amulets might be a little bit stronger though, because you are able to get class power, although rings you are able to hold up to 2 of them. Now you think that was cool. We now also have an armor system a little bit. So armor is very simple. Basically treat these as like class mods. They roll with skill points for multiple classes if you are multi-class, which is very, very strong. And they also primarily favor your primary class. So for the skill points. So your primary class could drop with like 3 skill points into it, and then your secondary class, the comm, would drop with like 2 skill points into it. But it'd be like 5 in total. But that also leads me to the rarities and how it actually works. So comms or armor pieces do not start dropping with skill points until they are at least blue rarity. Whites and uncommons do not drop with skill points. Commons literally just drop with 1 secondary passive bonus. Uncommons drop with 1 class power and 1 secondary bonus. Then rarities, or rares, blue rarities, they drop with up to 3 skill points, 1 class power, and then 2 out of 3 secondary bonuses. Purples drop up to 5 skill points, 2 class power bonuses, and 2 secondary bonuses. And then legendary, they have up to 5 skill points, 2 class power bonuses, and then 3 secondary effects, and then also a special legendary effect. Also keep in mind for the class power bonuses that your armor piece rolls for, it is going to roll higher in your primary class that you're spec'd in. Say if I'm spec'd into my primary class as a Graveborn, but I multi-class into a spell shot, my armor piece that are dropping are going to primarily favor bonuses towards my Graveborn, but I'll still get a little bit of bonuses towards my spell shot. Now, secondary stats are just, commonly rolled stats that you can find on basically all your gear. They go as follow. You have increased ward capacity, fire rate, gun critical hit chance increased, pet critical hit damage increased or chance raised, meaning your pet has a higher chance to score a critical hit and it does more critical hit damage. Increased health regen, increased movement speed, increased area of effect, splash radius, increased ability crit damage, increased melee damage, faster ward regen, max health, and there's a few more. Now, some of the legendary effects on the armor are pretty cool. We have things that give you a 50% increase in your critical hit damage, but you have a 50% less chance of doing actual critical hits. Then you also have just a standard death list. You're going to reserve 150% of your HP into your ward, but you're only going to have 1 HP. And then you also get a 50% shield recharge delay. Pretty simple. It's literally a death list. Another legendary effect goes as 30% Fate Maker damage is converted into dark magic damage with a 30% efficiency. That is going to be very good for all Graveborns, I'm telling you. And then the other one I like to call statue. You stand still, you gain 50% dark magic efficiency, 50% poison damage, and 50% critical hit chance. Very strong. So yeah, you combine your 2 rings, your amulet, and your piece of armor. That is 4 pieces in which you were able to get some massive buffs towards your character passively, and on your armor you're able to snag extra skill points, which is always welcomed. Along with those passive buffs you can get to your character, you also have things like hero points. Now, hero points can be unlocked through challenges, or I believe extra XP once you are in the end game and at post level 40. Simple MMO stats: you have strength, dexterity, intellect, wisdom, constitution, and attunement. Strength gives you increased critical hit damage. Dexterity gives you increased critical hit chance. Intellect gives you increased spell cooldown. And then wisdom is going to give you increased status damage. Basically your DOTs from all of your elements that you're doing. Constitution, max HP, and increased ward. Very simple. And then attunement is just faster active skill cooldown. So for the wards or the shields, the wards are the shields in this game. That's what they're calling them, though. They're calling them wards. Ashen is a fast recharge, low capacity. Pangoblin is slow recharge, high capacity. Hyperius has a special effect. For example, give you amp shots or something like that, but it does have a slower recharge and it will sacrifice a portion of the shield to do said effect. The rarities of the shield all have their own standard default buffs like recharge rate, delay, and capacity. So you have your white rarities, your green rarities, your blue rarities, your epic rarities, and then your legendaries. White rarities can roll with 0 components, unfortunately, but the greens are able to roll with 1 component. Blue rarities shields are able to roll with 2 components. Purple rarity shields are able to roll with 3 components, and then legendaries have their own special effect. The components go as follow. You have absorb, adaptive, increased capacity, recharge delay, increased speed while depleted, increased health, shoot out a nova. You have just quicker recharge. You have a reflect, increased resilience, resistance. You have a Roid component, which is increased melee damage. You have a knockback on break component. You have a spike component. You have a trigger happy component, a turtle component, which is going to increase your shield overall capacity. And then you have speed while full component. Also, let me just go ahead and say a huge shout out and thank you to mentalmars.com for helping me get all of this information. I'll be leaving a link to there at the top of the description as well. Now, returning, we are going to be having things like anointments returning, but they're returning in a much weaker form, in the form of enhancements, or enchantments rather. So enchantments are going to start dropping once you reach level 15, and you can reroll enchantments with moon orbs that you obtained from chaos chambers. However, the price for you to reroll an item is going to exponentially increase the more you reroll it, so be careful. Luckily though, these enchantments are nothing too insane. They're just nice little passive that you can get. So for instance, spell enchantments go as follows. They are all on cast anointment. Keep that in mind. You have 6% melee damage for 10 seconds, 6% ability damage for 10 seconds, 6% gun damage for 10 seconds, 3% damage just overall for 10 seconds, and then 6% element damage, whatever element it is, whether it's fire, poison, cryo, dark magic. It's going to increase that element by 6% for 5 seconds. Okay, for some of the guns, we have action skill start anointments or enchantments. 8% gun damage for 10 seconds, 8% melee damage for 10 seconds, 4% overall damage for 20 seconds, 8% spell damage for 10 seconds, status chance and status damage increased by 4% for 10 seconds. While action skill is active, 10% whatever elemental damage it is, fire, cryo, poison, dark magic, 10%. Now keep in mind, this is while action skill is active, so there's no timer on these, just as long as your action skill is up. 7% all elemental damage. That's a big one. That anointing is for every elemental piece of elemental damage you are doing regardless. And then 10% pet damage. So that's it. Nothing too crazy. There's literally not even one of these buffs that goes over 10%, which I think is a great idea. These are just nice little minute ways to get extra damage circling. These kind of remind me of like mods in a way in Destiny 2. I think this is a much better system than what we had in Borderlands 3 with anointments. Let's keep things moving here. We're talking about melee weapons. So obviously melee has their own like sort of mechanic in Wonderlands. You literally have your own slot for a melee weapon. Melee weapons also have their own manufacturers, right? You have Valora, which is two-handed, very high DPS, slow, sluggish handling, no lunge melee weapons. You have Swift, which are swords. They're low damaging, fast handling melee weapons. You have Cleave, which is axes. Relatively low DPS, but they do have a medium swing speed, so they're fairly more fast than the Valora. That's Cleave. They do also have a high critical hit stat, which is very important. So with the Cleave, with the axes, you want to hit those critical hits, get some nice damage. And then you have Bonk, which is blunt force trauma, baby. Very high damage, slug as hell, and no critical hit damage because it's a freaking bonk. Now keep in mind, these melee weapons can also roll with melee attack mods. For instance, you have things like restore 3.5% action skill, which is pretty cool. Amp your next 3 shots by 34.4% for 10 seconds. Restore 3.4% spell cooldown. Status chance and status damage increased by 18.8% for 10 seconds. They even have Groundbreaker here. Basically 6% of all the damage dealt in the past 10 seconds is going to be applied towards your melee attack, your next melee attack, which is very cool. They just put that on a weapon instead of like a guardian perk. 6.1% health and ward capacity, just very nice. And then you also have this one, which you can gain 5.2% damage reduction and melee damage for 10 seconds, and this effect stacks up to 5 times. So I don't know if there's going to be like some sort of gun that is like a if there's like some sort of way to do like a big blast of melee damage and just kill a bunch of enemies real quick. Alright, last but not least, let's talk some Chaos Chambers. So these are basically the starting end-game content from Wonderlands. Chaos Chambers are random dungeons. There are 3 rooms in these in the random dungeons. At the very end, there is going to be a mini-boss. Once you kill that mini-boss, there is going to be 3 more rooms, and then you're going to finish off with the main boss. 6 rooms in total per Chaos Chamber. Non-boss rooms have 2 portals at the end of the room to determine your difficulty for the next room. You have 3 lives to beat it, and if you die, you still keep all the loot that you collected during your run. Now keep in mind, while you're clearing out these rooms, this is where you're going to be earning your moon orbs to reroll enchantments. Also, you're going to be obtaining these things called crystals. You can get extra crystals by completing the main objective and the side objective on the side of your, the right side of your screen. So throughout the Chaos Chambers and throughout the rooms, you're able to get things like blessings. Blessings are basically boosts. For instance, you can get one that gives you more crystal. It gives you a passive boost to one of your stats. It can give you a dice with a random piece of new loot that you don't have. Or you can get something what's called a curse, and it's going to be an added challenge in the next room. Curses also have tiers like easy, medium, and hard. And then you if you want, at the very end, you can spend crystals to make the next room elite. Keep in mind, with all of this stuff working against you, if you beat it, you're gonna get a lot of extra good loot, which is always welcomed here. Now keep in mind, once you beat the chaos chamber, you are able to enter the reward room. And the way this reward room works is that they have statues that are focused onto whatever piece of gear you want, whether it's an SMG, a shotgun, a pistol, a piece of armor, a ring, an amulet, a rocket. There's a statue for there that's focused in that specific category of gear, and you spend your hard-earned crystals that you got throughout that run on those statues, and they spit out exactly that. So it makes it a lot easier to focus down, niche down on what you need for your build, so you're not just sitting there spending hours farming the same boss over and over again, waiting for one little thing to drop. Also, at the very end, when you do complete a chaos chamber, they do pull up a nice little breakdown screen to see what kind of damage you're doing, what source provided the most damage, how much damage you took, how much damage your ward took. You know, just nice little niche information that can really help to niche down, like, okay, what damage am I missing out on, and just, you know, better critique yourself and critique your build so you can make it even better, which I really appreciate. And also, for a little bit of flexing on the community, if you want, each week there's going to be a weekly chaos chamber stat, and what it is, it's going to be the same room, same stuff, same exact thing for the entire week, so the entire community can try and race it, see who has the highest time. Pretty cool little source of friendly competition, which is always good. Other than that, though, that is going to conclude my breakdown guide, everything you need to know heading into Wonderlands. Once again, if you want to know more about the characters, I did a full skill tree breakdown. I'll leave a link to that top of the description, along with the link to mentalmars.com, a great person in the community, and overall a great website as well for any Borderlands fan, Wonderlands fan, anyone that's looking for information on the game, on the franchise, on the series. Head over to mentalmars.com, link at the top of the description. Anyways, though, guys, thank y'all so much for watching this long ass video. Hope you got something useful out of it. And my name's Kree, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.